about just that.
You cited during your speech truth as the most important tenet of American conservatism. Why, therefore, did you call irrelevant the Israeli attack in 1967 on the USS Liberty, which left dozens of American servicemen dead and hundreds wounded?
You can already tell as soon as he mentioned the USS Liberty that Ben's physical reaction was very uncomfortable. You could see the smirk. You could see the shift in his physical disposition at the podium. On our channel, we have had the pleasure of having Phil Turney as a guest, one of the few surviving members of the USS Liberty. But that's not the only person. We are fortunate enough where we are also going to have another guest. And let me confirm. His name is Mo Schaefer. So we are working on that right now as we speak, on having another guest who happened to survive the USS Liberty. And we are going to continue to make this a central focus until justice is done for our service members on that fateful day in 1967.
So what I actually said is that if we're looking at modern Israeli-American relations, looking at an attack that happened mistakenly by multiple Navy reports, multiple Israeli reports, and all available evidence.
So he's lying through his teeth on that fucking stage right now. And if Phil Turney was there, he would tell him that he's a fucking liar. And how do I know this? Because Phil Turney and I communicate on the regular. I love that man. It's like talking to my late grandfather. And he told me that he was at an event recently at the Heritage Foundation and how Lil Ben Shapiro got up on stage and started spewing his pro-Israel bullshit to that crowd. And it's not going to last. It's not going to last. So the idea that he's up there right off the bat, lying about what actually went down on that fateful day in June in 1967. There are people alive who said that they had thrown out distress signals forever and they knew that Israel was trying to sink the boat. They failed, but they took quite a few soldiers with them. So again, propaganda for the Zionist state. That is his job. And he's not going to get pushback from that audience because Turning Point USA's lifeblood is now dependent on the capital coming in directly from the Israel lobby.
And using that attack in order to undermine today's relations between Israel and America, that's irrelevant. As irrelevant as it would be to cite a piece of evidence from World War II or from 1776 to define America's relations with, for example, Great Britain or Germany today. That does not mean that the attack wasn't horrible for the Americans involved, that it wasn't bloody and terrible. The Israeli government paid reparations to the people who were killed. If you look at the actual military record of what happened on the USS Liberty, it was clearly a mistaken and tragic attack.
Once again, that is a lie. It was not a mistake. It was not a false attack. It was a direct attack, and they were going to blame Egypt for it. Why? When did this happen, ladies and gentlemen? It happened in June of 1967. What happened 2 years prior? The Gulf of Tonkin incident, of which we now know today was a false flag, perpetrated by our people, possibly Israel, for the purpose of going to war or expanding the war in Southeast Asia. They needed a reason to rally the masses in the country. Well, you know what? As Jen and I say often, dead men tell no tales. And if the USS Liberty was sunk that day, the Zionist state's narrative in the midst of the 6-day war would have won out, the Greater Israel Project would have expanded then. But to the survivors, they refused to let that happen. Bless Phil Turney, Mo Schaefer, and the rest of those boys who are still alive and kicking today. And we will use our platform to continue to speak truth to power, to bring justice once and for all.
The people who frequently cite the USS Liberty, however, are not talking about the specifics of the USS Liberty. I suspect that the vast majority of people who bring this up are doing so in order to suggest that Israel deliberately attacked an American ship because Israel deliberately wants to harm America.
Yes, they do. And you know it. With that shit-eating grin on your face. Ah, what the hell, Ben Shapiro? You ought to give me a smack.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'll teach you.
When you lie like that, that's the first thing that I see. Is how can we possibly give him a smack across the mouth that will take the taste out of it? Maybe he enjoys it. Who the hell knows?
Connected generally with a larger point. I wonder if that's your point.
If the truth matters, then the Israeli government must be held accountable for that attack. The American flag was flying on that ship. You do not mistake an American ship for a foreign one when our flag is flying.
So, we can spend the rest of the time talking about the specifics of the U.S. Liberty attack, or you can actually go look at the naval investigations that were done, multiple naval investigations.
So right away, he immediately goes back to the State Department saying, hey, we have eyewitnesses, we have survivors of the attack from the USS Liberty that say exactly what happened that day. Well, listen, you know what you can do? You can go and look at the reports that were listed, and that is exactly what happened that day. So I don't really care what the surviving members of the USS Liberty have to say. I care about what the State Department review of the actual day has to say. Am I right? Is that what I have to say? Okay. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's Ben Shapiro for you.
Investigations that were done. The reality is that people were flying Mirage planes for the Israeli military at the time. The USS Liberty was sailing in an area where it had essentially gone off-grid. The Israeli military mistook it for an Egyptian ship. They thought it was shelling Al Arish, which happened not to be true. In the initial attack, the American flag was knocked down, and then the attack went on for about 90 minutes. And then, as soon, you can hear this, by the way, on the tapes of the Israeli pilots talking to each other, as soon as they realize that it's an American ship, they call off the attack, they speed a ship to try and help the USS Liberty. There have been multiple unfortunate friendly fire incidents between Allied forces, including, for example, in the Gulf War, where U.S. forces were responsible for killing about 9 British troops during the Gulf War. It's an unfortunate reality of war, but you're not answering my question, which is, what is your broader agenda in asking the question? Because I suspect that your question is not limited to your specific ire over an incident that happened in 1967.
The whole point, all of our points, is that we know that Israel has basically been behind just about every foreign conflict, war that we have been involved in since World War II. In one way, shape, or another, they have played a role. And we do not want anything to do with them anymore. Your entire existence is predicated on protecting the Israel-US-Zio relationship. That's what you're paid to do. That's what the Daily Wire is funded to do. That's why you have a relationship with the Prime Minister, Netanyahu Milikowski, and the president, who you have hated forever, but because he's now Israel's bitch, thanks to Miriam Adelson, you don't love him. You just love what he does for Israel, like Mark Levin. Same thing. So again, a liar and a scumbag.
I think we should question any foreign country's relationship with our government.
That's totally fine, but I'm just wondering why you
serve American interests.
Again, I'm perfectly fine with questioning any country's relationship with the United States.
Except Israel.
But again, I'm wondering what your motivation is in bringing up a 6-decade-old attack.
All he does is keep sticking his foot in his tiny little bitch ass mouth. I totally don't understand why you feel the need to bring up something that happened 6 decades ago. Why is that so important? Maybe because there are survivors that are still being persecuted for that event for surviving. The fact that there has never been a formal investigation done. It is the only maritime attack in the history of this country in which we did not retaliate, in which we did not bring formal charges, of which there has been no justice, nowhere, never, ever. And you stand in the way of it. You are an anti-American scumbag of the worst kind. And if I ever saw you, I'd slap the fucking taste out of your stupid grinning mouth. I fucking hate this guy.
As though it is the #1 issue in assessing the relationship between Israel and the United States today.
Well, many problems persist to this day, but it's interesting that you say 6-decade-old incident when there are many people in this audience who were alive for that attack, as if this is something that's irrelevant.
Well,
that doesn't
no, it's just not particularly relevant to assessing the relationship between the United States and Israel today.
Yes, it is. It's... This is about as relevant as anything. You know why? This comes full circle to what I said at the top of the show, ladies and gentlemen. It's not what you know. It's what you can prove. You know what we can prove? Israel attacked the United States. They shelled the USS Liberty into oblivion, killing 33 service members, injuring about 125, and tried to start a regional war in the Middle East in 1967 to facilitate the Greater Israel Project, of which they have still been trying for over 60 years to complete. There is nothing to argue here. And the only reason Shapiro is saying what he's saying is because he's a paid agent. There's no other reason. And the way that he denigrates the memories of soldiers fallen, you know, this is one of the things that has always been at the heart of so much of why people hate this country. We are so ready, willing, and able to say we support the troops as long as we can get them into service. But then when they're out of the service, or they've been hurt, or they've been affected, forget them, fuck them. They're just peons, peasants, little people that we could, pluck out of obscurity from bumbleweeds, Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma. Who cares? They're a dime a dozen. Throw them out there. We'll get more. People like Ben Shapiro are very important because he speaks fast. He thinks he's a sharp son of a bitch, but he's not. His grift is so easy to see through. I don't know how everybody doesn't see it. And I hope that if this clip takes off, that enough people will continue to see it. All he has is money. All he has is government power. He has no real ideology. He just talks in circles. And the second somebody surprises him with a confrontation like this, not only does he not know what to say, but the second this young man decides to share his thoughts, Ben does what he always does, and he talks over him. Shocker.
In the same way that in 1967, there are a wide variety of countries with which the United States had different relations. Okay, it's clear you're not going to actually answer the question, so I'm happy to move to this one.
You know what? We're all happy to answer it. And this young man was more than happy to answer it. And as you could see, just watch his disposition.
Different relations. Okay, it's clear you're not going to actually answer the question, so I'm happy to move.
You're owned, Benny boy. You're owned. You didn't win. You lost. Full stop. I believe this young man's name is, it's like Cam Huddy or something like that. I'll get it right when we put it in the description, but shout out to this young man for doing what I would have done if I got to that podium. I don't know what I would have addressed. if it would have been the USS Liberty. But if I was given a list of issues to address in Ben Shapiro's direction, that's the one I probably would have picked.